Hey everybody, this week on the Inkwell, we're taking a look at Robert Oster Morning Mist and Papier Plume Lake Michigan Winter. So a couple weeks ago, I stuck my foot in my mouth and said that these two inks look, well, pretty much identical. And when you look at the swabs, there are similarities. They're pretty close to each other, but there are also some subtle differences. When you look at the close-ups here, you can actually start to see some of those differences coming through. And that's kind of why we're doing this video, to see how different these inks really are. So for the writing sample, I brought out my Benu pens. In the Benu Briolette, we are going to have Lake Michigan Winter by Papier Plume. I like the combination here. I like having the flashy pen with the medium Schmidt nib. And honestly, I just like the way this pen looks. What can I say? Now, in the Benu Graceful Chameleon, it is also a medium Schmidt nib. Both of these pens have very similar nibs. They write almost identical. So we're getting a good comparison of the two inks on the writing sample here. Now, let's take a look at the writing sample. And the first thing you're going to notice is the difference in color. Morning Mist is giving you more saturation, a little bit more vibrance. And Lake Michigan Winter is kind of giving you more of a frozen tundra feel. I mean, frozen Lake Michigan, that's what it's here for. And you really do get that difference in color when it comes to the drips and when it comes to the swabs on Tomoe River versus the swabs in the color ring. So looking at the close-ups here, you can see that color variation a little bit more and the shading variation as well. Morning Mist is a little bit flatter on the shading, and you get a lot more depth to the color on Lake Michigan Winter. Dry times are actually very close to each other, but it's when you get down to the drips and the swabs that you can see the sheen in Morning Mist versus the flatter profile of Lake Michigan Winter. The good thing though, both inks are really well controlled, and there's virtually no bleed or show through on the regular writing. Obviously, the drips are going to bleed. Now, let's go ahead and do our water sample. For this, we're actually using Rhodia lined paper. I ran out of dot pad on the Hanxiong video. But looking at these two, they look pretty similar once again on Rhodia. Actually, they look more similar on Rhodia than they do on Tomoe. So I'm going to break out the timer and let the music play while we see how each of these inks handles the water sample. Okay, so Lake Michigan Winter is holding up a lot better to the water than Morning Mist. You can see a lot of the ink lifting from Morning Mist, and when I do the wipe down here, you can really see how much the Robert Oster ink just released from the paper itself. Now, the number 16 lined paper is really close to dot grid, so I would imagine that the performance is going to be the same on this that I would have had there. Let's take a closer look, and you can see the legibility of Lake Michigan Winter compared to Morning Mist. So this is a huge difference. If you were able to get Papier Plume Lake Michigan Winter, you lucked out on a good blue ink that's going to hold up, even though it doesn't have the saturation that some people may find a little bit more pleasing or appealing when it comes to the lighter blue inks. So how does my statement that these two inks are pretty close to each other hold up? Well, Robert Oster Morning Mist is pretty close in color. It's a little bit more saturated with more sheen than Lake Michigan Winter here, which has a more flatter profile. But when it comes down to it, these are two very different inks. Yes, you can get close in color, but I really think if you can get your hands on Lake Michigan Winter, you're going to have a much better writing experience, and it really is the case for me. I love Morning Mist. It's one of my go-to inks, but as long as I've got Lake Michigan Winter, it's going to be sitting in the cupboard for quite a bit. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap up the video. Thank you guys for watching. Click the Discord link down below, join the conversation, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and follow the channel on Twitter and Instagram at The Inkwell, and support the channel over on Patreon. And use the code down below for your 10% off at Pen Chalet. That does it for this week. I'll see you next time.